A 32-year-old mother and her 5-year-old daughter would go missing from their home in rural Vermont, and the prime suspect has never been charged. But before we get started, welcome to True Crime with Maneater. If you love all things true crime, including missing person cases, cold cases, and just the strange happenings of the world, you've come to the right place. If you want to support the channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. Let's get started. On June 6, 1978, Grace Marie Canto Reapp and her daughter Gracie Noel Reapp disappeared from their residence on Hanley Lane in rural Vermont. Grace allegedly left a note for her husband stating that she and Gracie were leaving their home voluntarily and had no plans to return, but neither of them has ever been heard from again. Grace's husband, Michael Eugene Reapp, reported his wife and daughter missing to the Vermont State Police on June 11, 1978, 5 days after they supposedly left home. But the thing is, the concerned father and husband, Michael, filed for divorce from Grace on June 16, 1978, which was only 10 days after his wife and child vanished. When he filed for divorce, he cited desertion, but him and Grace also had 2 sons, and those boys were 11 and 7 years old in 1978. Grace's relatives firmly believe that she would never abandon her sons and just take her daughter to run away. Authorities would question Michael regarding his wife and daughter's disappearance after he filed the police reports. He said that him and Grace married in 1965 when he was 20 and she was 19. He would also admit that he had quite a few affairs during the time that he was married to Grace, and that he was having one at the time that she disappeared. There are reports that Grace was physically and emotionally abused by Michael, but he would simply maintain that Grace took their daughter on her own free will and vanish. Michael would write a letter to Grace's family in December of 1978, and he told them that he believed Grace left because he was having an affair, and he said that she left her sons behind because they knew about the affair. He would be granted a divorce from Grace in July of 1979, just over a year after she was last seen, and then he would marry their children's former babysitter in November of 1979. In 1983, he lost his job as an air traffic controller and moved his family to Florida. Eventually, him and his second wife would divorce in 1985. Yet he still continued to tell authorities that he believed Grace and Gracie were living with Grace's relatives, and he said that they were keeping it a secret, and it was, probably because of the affairs and that she didn't want him to have custody of Gracie, and that he hoped Gracie would contact him in the future. Grace's family never gave up, though. They continued to investigate the disappearance of their daughter and granddaughter, and they haven't heard from them since 1978. They would reopen the case in the summer of 1987, and extensive searches were done on that 10-acre rural property in Vermont. But they had been doing that since 1978 when Grace and Gracie went missing. Unfortunately, these investigations haven't turned up any sign of Grace or Gracie, but it was classified as homicides in 1996. In the 1990s, Michael would remarry for a 3rd time. And then in May of 1996, one of Grace's sons would die in Germany of natural causes. Vermont authorities interviewed Michael in Florida in September, yet he continued to claim he believed his former wife and daughter were alive and well. And then on October 26, 1996, Michael left his home in Jupiter, Florida, and drove his pickup truck to New Orleans, where he made a withdrawal at the New Orleans ATM. Grace's surviving son would report his father missing to Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department in November of 1996. Michael's truck was located at an airport in New Orleans in December of 1996, but it seems there's no trace of him. It appears he only took his toothbrush and cigarettes with him, and from that point on, nobody seems to know what happened to Michael. That is until June 2006, when authorities charged Michael with a 1st-degree murder in connection with Grace's disappearance and a 2nd-degree murder charge in connection with Gracie's. Police theorized that Grace was killed because she found out about Michael's affair, and perhaps Gracie was killed because she witnessed her mother's murder. Michael was still missing at this point, although police had been searching for him and would continue to do so. And then in June of 2010, investigators found a John Doe, and that John Doe turned out to be Michael. On January 10, 1997, in Yuma, Arizona, Michael abducted a man at gunpoint and stole his car. His victim would manage to escape, and Michael was forced to pull over on the highway after a high-speed police chase. But before law enforcement could arrest him, he shot himself in the head. At the time, his identity was unknown, so he was labeled a John Doe. And then 13 and a half years later, a fingerprint match identified him. Authorities did conduct over 25 digs on the Reapp's former Vermont property since 1996, and they do believe that Grace and Gracie's remains are buried somewhere on the property. They still have hope that they will recover them, and they firmly believe that both Grace and Gracie were murdered. I'm really curious to know why Michael suddenly disappeared. Did he think police were closing in on him? All he took was his toothbrush, cigarettes. He went to New Orleans, ditched his car at an airport, presumably to make it look like he's fled the country, and then suddenly he turns up as a John Doe from Yuma, Arizona. What did he do during that time? I do wonder if Grace and Gracie's bodies are on the property or not. It is 10 acres, that's quite a bit of land, but perhaps he didn't put them there. Maybe he thought that was too close to home and that he would be a prime suspect and that they would search his property. I mean, it's very logical to think that they are there given the vast amount of space and that he knew his own property, he knew where to put them. But it is unsettling to think that they've done all of those searches over the years and still haven't found bodies. I'm also curious about Grace's surviving child. He was raised by his father. Did he see anything suspicious? Was he questioned by the police as a child, as an adult? Something about it just doesn't sit right with me. I don't believe he's a suspect, but maybe he heard or seen something. Maybe his father was abusive. Michael did abuse Grace, so it's not a far stretch to think that he also abused his children. But it still bothers me that he just decided to up and leave one day and go into hiding. Of course, we can say that he's probably guilty and that perhaps he felt like police were closing in on him, so he decided to go on the run and make it look like he disappeared. But why then? And Michael himself is obviously just a terrible person. His wife and child supposedly go missing, and he marries the former babysitter a few months later. That's just incredibly absurd to me. And it appears he either didn't care or didn't realize that that would paint him as a prime suspect. I would also wonder if they questioned all of these ex-wives. It's not uncommon for an abusive man who murdered their first wife to tell the second wife, "I'll kill you too," or something along those lines. Does one of his wives know anything? I feel like there's just so much information that's missing. But that's it for today, guys. If you like this video or any other video on my channel and want to support, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. If there's a case you'd like me to cover, pop it in the comments below and I'll be sure to get to it. In the meantime, check out some other videos on my channel while you wait for the next upload, and I'll see you then.